Movie collectors, we all love that nice limited edition boutique label release. But what does it take to start and run a new label? With the market for boutique labels already at an all-time high, how difficult is it to stand out and make some kind of impact?
We've had cash flow issues.
And making sure the discs work, in which some cases they didn't.
I just couldn't find the film element.
It's just doing the film justice.
I like to smell the boxes.
But, oh, these guys ain't going away.
We couldn't possibly afford to go after those titles, you know. We're friends with certain labels and not friends with other labels.
That was Graham and Tom. They run a new boutique label called Treasured Films, and I'm going to be picking their brains around how they set up a boutique label and how difficult it can be when the market already seems pretty packed with the likes of Arrow, Indicator, Radiance, Second Sight, Eureka, etc, etc. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I'm going to kick off with a relatively straightforward question. What drew you to set up your own boutique label?
You know, I was a collector of physical media. It was really Arrow Video that reignited that passion. And, you know, I started to become a bit of a fanboy and an addict for what's the next title, what's the next release. Because I loved how they were produced and curated. From there, it was just inspiration, you know, it wasn't something that we thought we could do better than any other particular label. What would we like to see as fans and consumers? If we like the film and we think we can do a half decent job, then we will. It's as simple as that, really.
With that said, do you have any previous experience in the physical media releasing market?
None whatsoever.
So I'm a filmmaker, so I've self-distributed in the past. Nothing of this stature, you know, but still kind of like in the realm of just building little menus and making sure the discs work, in which some cases they didn't.
One thing we can do, as Tom's mentioned, is that he's a filmmaker and he's quite experienced with filming and editing. So we can do a lot of that in-house and keep costs down. A lot of times we can produce, if I do say so myself, stonking extras. We might not have the funds to do 4K and this kind of mess, but we can always put together a good package for sure.
This is a product that's going to go out onto the shelves across the country and beyond. As much as you want to put your personal stamp on each release, you've still got to consider the market at large and how much that commands what you put into a package and what your package represents.
With there being so many boutique labels releasing quite frequently, the competition always seems really high. It's got to be difficult knowing where to start, right?
The answer to that is yes. Well, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, Arrow have had a bit of flack recently for being a bit mainstream, but then even their mainstream is still cultish. I mean, I love Silence of the Lambs. I think it's a classic film, so I'm really excited about getting my hands on that. They'll still do, you know, necromantic re-releases.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not really there to compete. We're there to just sort of put our stamp on what we think would make good releases, you know, and have a stab at the game. We're inspired by them more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. That's well said, Tom, for once. We can hold our own. It's been easy. As I said, it's been an expensive job. We took a gamble, but it's paying off, and we're quite friendly with some of the other labels, and they said, look, you've done better than we did it to start with, so hats off to you. We're friends with certain labels and not friends with other labels. It's only personal pride that the disappointing element if another label picked up a title that you were interested in. But, you know, if they put it out and they do a good job, then hats off to them.
Yeah.
I'm still going to buy it, so, you know, it'll still sit on my shelf.
It's just doing the film justice, giving it the release it deserves and try and make it definitive, I guess, really.
With boutique labels, I often consider how they choose or source their movies. Is it the extremely knowledgeable cinephile staff that choose the titles, or are they sourced a different way?
You know, sometimes you go chasing, sometimes it's just picking things on an available list, you know, and sometimes you really just get lucky. When I started, I knew that The Last Hunter, it was available from a list of titles that was sent to us from a Italian distributor, and I thought, oh, well, that's not a bad film, actually. Of course, bearing in mind that a lot of them have already been picked up by major labels already. Some will just be available. Some you'll have in mind, We got very lucky with Dawn of the Mummy, which was always intended to be Treasured Film's first release. I kind of gave up because I just couldn't find the film elements, and the rights were an issue. And I was offered it as a DVD, an SD rather. I said, well, no, I really want at least minimum HD master. And we found out that a German company took the time to use the German master and the Spanish master to make sure they had all the plot and the gore. So, a complete movie, in other words. And they restored it, and we had the master off them, and we did our own back and forth, didn't we, on
the colour correcting,
on the colour grading, and got it looking as, I think it's as good as it can be. I mean, there is inherent print damage, but it looks really good actually.
It does.
And so we were lucky because we know a lot of labels have been after that one, and that's sold quite well.
And these are the sort of titles that help build a label to what it is, So we're very lucky with it.
Yeah.
With the competition across boutique labels being at an all-time high, when they land on a particular title that they know they want, how do they go about acquiring the license for distribution? Is it just a case of making an offer, or does it come down to some kind of bidding war between labels?
Normally, you make an offer. Obviously, you have to budget in. If you want to do any scanning and restoration, that can cost quite a bit, depending on whether you want to carry it forward.
Bidding wars are a thing, but we've sort of tried to skirt around those.
Yeah.
Because, we're still very much starting out, and we don't want to find ourselves paying out too much before we've even started. So we're trying to pick titles that will do good business, but also maybe we caught them at the right time before they get too hot. We're not in the habit of getting ourselves into bidding wars just yet.
We couldn't compete with the big boys. So that kind of makes a decision and takes the stress away. Therefore, channel all your time and energies into things that you might get. I mean, for example, we've just announced The Islands. That's been available for a while to the UK market. I'm surprised nobody's picked it up. It has had releases in the States and Australia, but we love it. We think it's a cracking film.
And it's very surprising when you see films like that haven't been claimed for a decent release, and we just look at each of them and think, what are we missing here?
Treasured Films have released 3 titles since their inception approximately 19 months ago. Recently, we've seen announcements for 3 more titles from them, which are all now due to be released in quite close succession. So I wanted to dig a little deeper. Was there, or is there, a planned strategy for releases going forward?
Plans? Can you see this mess behind some scribble? Just like a lot of people who want to curse.
Giving the game away up here.
The honest answer is, when we started, the intention was to put out 1 a quarter and then bi-monthly. I don't think we ever want to get to a point where we're just knocking out X amount of copies every month, if that means compromising the quality and the sort of passion that goes into it.
Has there been anything that's slowed or changed your plans over time?
I think we've had cash flow issues only because we're a small fledgling business. You obviously have to wait for money from sales to come in to fund your next project. But we've recently signed with a better distributor, same guys who look after 88 and Indicator. So hopefully that will give us a leg up a bit. Sometimes you have to sort of start again, depending on, availability of interviewees and people's hours. It just so happens that recently we've been able to announce a few, but we haven't quite been able to say a specific date, because that's one thing we are weary of sort of customers complaining, oh, you said it'd be out on this day and it's a week later. Sometimes we sort of said Q3, Q4. If it's delivered early, then fine.
We try and be upfront with our customers as well, because, our personality does tend to shine through on a lot of what we do, really. So we try and maintain that sense, really, for better or worse. And plus, we don't want to have to rush something and then have to recall something because it's been rushed out the gate. We want to make sure it's right, but at the same time, we don't want it to take forever either.
For a relatively new label, how difficult can it be to get distribution and earn the trust of retailers to be able to get your product onto the shelves so we can all see them in the likes of HMV, FOP, and even listed on Amazon?
That comes down to the deal that you have with a distributor, and that's not always easy to set up because The distributor, obviously, they've got overheads when they invest in you, and they need to be assured that you're a worthy investment and you're going to be around for the long term. So once that's established, no, it's not. It's fairly easy because they've already got existing links with the likes of Amazon, HMV, and Zamlink. We have our own warehouse here, self-distribute as well. The more we sell directly, the more money we make, and the more that goes into subsequent releases.
Now, there are those of us that love a nice limited edition for absolutely everything, but there are also those of us that don't want the bells and whistles and just prefer a more standard edition. I want to know if we can expect standard editions from Treasured Films, or if we'll need to pick up that title in its limited edition form, if we don't want to miss it.
Well, we'll see is the answer to that. The Last Hunter, I mean, that's almost, the limited edition is almost sold out. So we have introduced the standard version, and again, it's a learning curve for us because not everyone wants the rigid and the all singing, all dancing. So there's different schools of thought there. Some people have told us, look, just release both at the same time. It won't make any difference. But I don't know. I think in some titles you're not sure about overall sales, so you want to see the deluxe version do well to see if there's any justification. These things cost thousands to print, so if you're sort of sitting on stock, well, for a fledgling label, that doesn't help. It just depends on demand. Phil,
Yeah, it depends on how quick one of them goes. If one of them's gone, then we've still, like Gray said, if we've still got that license left to play with, then why not fulfill the demand and get some more out, But obviously the point of it being limited edition is that we don't want to take the mick and then print more of those, so it would then be a standard, wouldn't it?
As collectors, we all love the packaging, the boxes, the art cards, and everything else that comes along with it. What can we expect from Treasured Films in terms of its packaging?
I really love second sight releases with the thick slip cases. And it's funny, I know I was watching a recent interview of yours, and not everyone's likes the sort of the rigid boxes and the art cards, and that's fair enough. But I love them. I think they look great on the shelf and to the touch and to the smell.
You're buying an experience, aren't you?
Yeah, and I'm weird like that, by the way. I like to smell them. I like to smell the boxes.
Whenever we first get a shipment of a new release in, the first thing Gray has to do is give them a good sniff.
Yeah. I just love the smell of the freshly printed material, but anyway, nothing my.
There's an addition that Treasured Films have made for any orders that are made directly with them. One of the perks of pre-ordering directly with Treasured Films is a title-related magnet. I want to know what the consideration was for this extra little perk, and whose idea was it?
That was my brilliant idea. It was Tom's. No, it's well, we were looking to use other things that didn't cost a fortune to produce, but you weren't just produced for the sake of it. And we've seen the guy who we use, he does quite a lot of enamel pins and magnets. Again, just sort of curating and thinking, well, what would be a nice extra there? So for our release of Mausoleum, we went with the boob demon, didn't we?
The bitey
boob demon, because I mean that's just iconic, and the quality was good, and we like that. So
and now they've all gone.
They've all sold out, and but yeah, they have proved popular. So we've got one for Dawn of the Mommy,
which is sold out.
We've got one for You Might Be the Killer, which hasn't sold out. Still available. And then of the island, we thought the axe and the obvious fake head at the start would be good. But yeah, they do seem to be appreciated.
They will form a nice little collection.
Yeah, they will. Yeah. Talking about package in general, we came to the conclusion fairly early on that we didn't want packaging or the marketing of packaging to determine our film output, because there are some titles that are worthy of the deluxe treatment. And there's some titles that we've got in mind, sort of more independent, that frankly would look ridiculously OTT if you did that. So it's like, well, if you're going to put all them out deluxe, fine, people will come to expect that. But you would have to limit your film output, and we don't want to do that.
So we're trying not to make it gratuitous, basically,
Yeah.
aren't we? So,
Yeah.
but then some consumers, they expect rigid for everything.
With the packaging, will Treasured Films always be aiming towards rigid boxes for their releases, or have slipcovers ever been a consideration?
I mean, I'd like to see a rigid slip where we can. Some films, it just isn't worth producing, because obviously they're quite costly. So I can tell you that our next few productions they'll be mixed again, but everything will always, if we can help it, always have a slip, always. And there will be a slip of different artwork, because I can't personally stand having a slip when the slipcase art is exactly the same as what's on the inlay. I don't see the point of
No,
that.
there's no point.
There's nothing different. There's no addition, is there?
No.
It'll be another collector's positive, hopefully.
Yeah.
With the B-movie nature of a lot of the boutique labels, I sometimes wonder, is a 4K upgrade always needed? Can it sometimes be a step too far?
Well, I think it's just another step towards keeping the market going, really, isn't it? Keeping the market alive. It's like repurposing releases that have had their HD or 2K in the past, but it's just their way of pulling it back out into the market again. But then some films weren't made to be seen that clearly. I don't, like you say, I think, especially when you look around in the niche areas. But then other films can benefit completely from it. So it's a bit of this and a bit of that, really, like everything else. I remember when The Evil Dead first came out on DVD, and I'd never seen it as HD as that at that point. But then you can see, the match shots stuck out like sore thumbs, and I figured, is this really the way to watch this? But then now that's considered lo-fi, so it's just to keep this sort of physical media market going. Really, it's just another sort of step forward.
With Treasured Films being a relatively new label, can it be difficult to find and build the right audience?
The more you release, obviously, the more of a cumulative effect it has. I guess we were lucky in the sense that people really jumped on the fact that, for example, last Hunter, we started bells and whistles with the rigid slip and the art cards and things, and we put a lot of money into that. And as I say, I was inspired by Second Sight for that. I ummed and ahed, and I thought, well, is this going too big too soon for a first release? But it sold well, and more importantly, the reception's been good. Which obviously whets the appetite for what we've got coming out in subsequent releases.
And it's funny because consumers, they'll see a new label come out with a new release, and if it's just one or two at that point, they don't know if this label's going to be around for a third or a fourth. But when you start announcing that fifth and sixth title, they realise, oh, these guys ain't going away. So therefore, they're more invested in seeing what this label's doing and how it's growing, and then therefore we attract more and more.
Treasured Films is one of those labels that do have their own websites, so as well as being able to pick up from the normal retailers, you can order direct from them and get some little extra perks. Does ordering directly affect them in any way?
Well, this is why we offer web store exclusives, like the magnets and the posters.
Free postage.
And free postage, because we want to make it worth their while, and they should know every time they do so, they are supporting us directly. So please, order directly, guys.
We're not taking a penny out of this business at the moment. Everything we make goes back into the next release. So please buy direct from us. It's a big help. It's nice to see our products in HMV. We've been up more than once, haven't we, to local shopping centre, took a photo with us. So yeah, I mean, some people like to pick up and browse and feel. That's fine. We get that. There aren't many shops, I guess, that you could do that with physical media nowadays. But yeah, I mean, it literally does make a big difference. So to sell directly. So please continue to buy.
As we've come to expect from boutique labels, we want extra features as well as the nice new restorations. What sort of extras can we expect from Treasured Films, and how do they decide what sort of things to include in the package?
Again, it all comes from what do we want. We're not saying we're any better or any worse than anyone else. It's just what we really want to see. To be honest, audio commentary, personally, I find can be very dry. And I think, if I listen to them, I think, well, that's an hour and a half of my life. I'll never get back. I could have watched another movie on that. We kind of curate and say, look, make it informative, make it critical, but put some humour on us, because Tom and I have both got a very good sense of humour, and that's part of the Treasure Film stamp. I don't know whether, if you've seen Mausoleum, if you've seen the John Harrison video essay that he did on Marjo Gortner, you can watch the credits. And it's basically a series of outtakes.
A little blooper reel, yeah.
Tom put together interviews, audio commentaries. I know these things are very subjective, and what I like somebody else might not, etc. But that's kind of the beauty of having your own label. You can put it out, and you hope things sell, obviously. But
and we try and keep all bases covered, don't we?
Yeah.
So we like to try and have someone from the production itself give us some insight as to, you know, what happened on set and how the things were made. But then we like the critique side of it as well. The, you know, people are analysing it, and then we just like to try and make sure we got all bases covered, don't we?
Exactly.
Each project is very different. You know, sometimes we're afforded loads of different assets. Sometimes we'll go to the people who made the film; they'll have bits and bobs for us. Sometimes assets from previous releases, they would kindly be donated or just, you know, given us the blessing to use. But most of the time, it's actually us creating the extras ourselves.
Because these releases tend to try and get so much on there in terms of extras, can it be difficult to put together a package? And how do they go about sourcing interviews from people that were involved with the production?
That again, it varies. You'll be very surprised at who gets back to you pretty sharpish, and then you'd be surprised to be, you know, who's going to flatline you and not get back to you at all. So You Might Be the Killer, that came with lots of assets, didn't it? That was stacked because, again, it's a fairly recent movie, so the filmmakers are still around and they're very reachable, and they're just as excited as we are that we're putting it out, so therefore they're willing to help as much as they can and give you all the assets they've got. You know, whereas if the film's older, you got less chance of finding anyone who's still alive for a start. So sometimes you do have to dig a little deeper and work a little harder to try and, you know, net somebody or something.
You Might Be the Killer is the film I discovered Treasured Films with. It's a horror flick with a little bit of a twist. It's one I enjoyed, and it's one I think I'll appreciate a nice edition of. I've already got it on order direct from them, and I'm expecting my killer magnet. I'm going to dig a little more about this one and find out what extras I might get.
Yeah, we've got all the Tom Crans. He was great sport, and
Brett Simmons,
the director, writer, producer. We've got quite a few.
Yeah, it's stacked that way.
And they had archival stuff like EPKs, as you mentioned, that were never put out on other releases.
Like there was some behind the scenes on set interviews that just were left unedited, so we took those and
Tom's tidied them up, haven't you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Dawn of the Mummy. Obviously, it's an old film now, and we reached out to a couple of cast members, and we either got no reply or no thanks. You know, it was a million years ago. I'm not interested, kind of thing. But at least they get back, so you don't waste your time chasing. But then you have to be a bit creative, and then again it comes to, well, what can we do? We're not going to produce filler, because that's pointless. So what else can we do? And again, we've come up with some great digital and physical extras there, haven't we?
Yeah.
We're trying at the moment to get an interview with Pierce Brosnan, and his agent said he's interested and he wants to do it, but it's just a case of when, because he's still a very busy man. But yeah, we weren't expecting him, Pierce Brosnan's ex-Bond star. But he's interested in doing an interview for a film that we're putting out. So yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed.
With the guys being movie fans, one thing that interests me, when it comes to creating the extras and doing the interviews, is this something they like and want to be involved with? Or does it have to be outsourced to others?
It differs. I mean, if they're trained right away and we'd like to meet them.
We're there.
But, people are obviously abroad in the States. We outsource. We've got a good connection there. Or in Italy, we've got good connections. So initially it was difficult, but nowadays it's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah. We tend to just know if the things are just slotting into place a lot easier than they had been before, So I think sometimes you just know, just right off the bat, what's got to happen there. So and so's got to do this. So and so's got to do that. Gray might fancy going down to do this one, that sort of thing. We'd happily do the lot if we could, but we've got work to do back at base that It just makes sense to. At first, it was an exciting prospect, wasn't it? Really. Now it's just like, as long as we get it, we're not fussed. as long as we can carry on with some other bits of work, that as long as we can attain it, that's fine. That sort of excitement of going out and doing it yourself, that sort of went out the window after release. Well, was it 1, 2?
I would carry the camera bag to go and meet people.
Yeah, like we said, there's exceptions, and sometimes you just got to put tools down and say, right, we're going down there to go and do this. I mean, film fans, first and foremost, that's why this is sort of a thing, So then those moments where you get to connect with the people tied to the productions that you're putting out there, that's, that's amazing, isn't it?
With the interviews, I consider, can the actors at times be a little difficult to deal with? Or can they struggle with finding an available slot to be able to schedule them in?
We've actually found out that the more popular stroke famous somebody is, the less of an ego they tend to have, don't they? That's been quite constant, whereas somebody who's had a bit of a fame and done one that seems to be right for themselves.
Yeah, and not interested, whereas on the other end of the scale, they carve that time out for you, and we can't thank them enough for that, really.
You may have seen treasured films popping up at certain fan conventions to try and get the word out about treasured films. I wondered if they enjoyed doing the conventions and what the fan reception has been like.
We do. We enjoy our conventions, don't we? I mean, they're hard work, but we love meeting people.
And they always tell us how much, they love the releases that we've done and, the job that we've done on them. I mean, it just feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's very gratifying. People say, well done for this, and come out with suggestions and stuff like that. Actually, we don't sell a lot of our own products at conventions because people tend to have already bought them.
Yeah, I've already got this, got that, I've already got this. So when's so-and-so coming out, so that's...
They've also been very busy working away at setting up their own convention. So obviously, we discussed a little around the background and why they're attempting this.
We're trying to get something going in the Midlands. Here's a scoop for you. We live in a very small town called Dudley in the West Midlands. And our most famous cine film son was a young man called James Whale, wasn't he? His father was a cobbler, and he went off to LA to create Frankenstein 1931.
Yeah.
Boris Karloff.
And Bride of Frankenstein.
And hardly anyone in the local area knows who he is, which is a shame, and which we're going to try and change. But as part of that appreciation, we're going to try hosting our own film conventions in our local area, because Tom and I, we regularly go, sort of up north and down south, which is fine. But we thought, well, nobody's really doing anything in the Midlands. And we want to do something, from that's sort of passionate, from the grassroots up. And so in November, we've got Jeff Lieberman coming over. We really want to get something that delivers for the fans and collectors. And we love, as I say, cons are hard work, but the vibe is excellent.
Yeah.
We never regret
It's
them.
nice because, you get to see the horror community at large and how they come together and how they all know each other and all that. And it's just nice to find your place amongst all that, really.
Yeah. The Jeff Lieberman one, we invited him over because we released Satan's Little Helper, and we honestly thought he'd say, no, thanks, but no thanks, and he didn't. He said, I'd love to come. We're showing his films in a proper cinema. It's going to be low key. There's only about 75 tickets available, and that's it. The venue we went to see last week was more for convention style, but again with the intention of maybe inviting one or two special guests, traders and things. Just really keeping it a passionate thing, not a money-making thing. So we don't want to lose money. Obviously, you've got to cover your overheads, but it's not going to be silly money for X amount to have an autograph or a photo. That's not what we're about at all. We want to get fans together, don't we? And we can all enjoy.
Because, a lot of conventions, they do reach their zenith when it comes to, expenditure and obviously being taken over by the bigger companies, and it just prices out so many people. So then as a result of that, people like us will start again and start small, and then people will flock, will gravitate towards the smaller events. The independent ones.
And of course, as with every other boutique label, us fans, we always want to have an idea of what's coming next. So obviously, I asked the question, do they have anything up their sleeves that we don't yet know about?
There are some on the horizon.
There are some. It's down to opportunity. For example, recently we were offered a found footage film to do with this serial killer's torture porn collection. It's it's Italian production, never seen the light of day, and I watched it at the screen, and I said to Tom, this will never get past the BBC. And we were encouraged, go for it, because, a lot does get past nowadays. But we've submitted it, and normally these things just take a few days, but this one's being passed to a compliance manager.
It's still being discussed.
Which doesn't necessarily mean that it won't get passed, but we're anxiously checking every day, because, even that's about 850 quid for submission.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. It's not like 80 quid.
That's the problem with physical media in this country. You're spending a lot of money before you've even got one release out the gate. It's and the BBC is just one of those expenditures, which is just it's enough to to be a crushing blow for any small company.
As I said before, it's all about that start, stop, start. You can acquire the license, but it might take quite a while to produce the extras.
It really does depend how things come together.
And of course, I also want to know, are they actively chasing anything at the moment?
No,
not really. No, I mean, there's so many different pools to sort of dip into. You don't know which one's going to hit you and take you by surprise and go, oh, hang on, we didn't consider that film before, but now we are. It really is that random sometimes.
Yeah.
There are designers for certain things, don't get me wrong, but then there's a whole wide sort of library of titles out there that we just didn't consider beforehand, and then all of a sudden there we are. It's just like that.
Being film fans, obviously they're going to have some favourites. So, are there any Holy Grail type titles that they have on their list that they'd love to release?
Well, I would like to release a film called Superstition or The Witch, which has had a release in the States. I think Screen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I mean, I'd love to do a 4K of that. I'd love to do a 4K of the Medusa Touch with Richard Burton. Absolutely love that film. And the score, I put that on vinyl straight away. It's going back to, a lot of the classics have already been released, and how are you going to top those anyway? It's kind of like there are films that you remember from your childhood that you think, I might like to put. I mean, I'd like to put out, and I've forgotten the title.
The Box of Delights.
Thank you, Tom. The Box of Delights. Do you remember the old BBC one with
Patrick Troughton?
Patrick Troughton. Have you ever seen that? But 40th anniversary now. It's excuse me. It's a kids' TV series, hence why I remember it fondly. But it's a great, and we were talking to the BBC, but they wanted a lot of money for it, so I'm not sure that's going to happen. But as I say, it's not, we're not horror, just specifically horror. If we like something, we'll put it out.
I think the general philosophy of boutique these days is that every sort of genre or every type of film is judged on its own merits equally. It's like, we're not like the days of the Criterion being that sort of elitist sense of classic cinema has sort of shifted a little bit now, because a lot of boutique labels are sort of beating them at their own game and releasing the same sort of fare that they would, but then they're also releasing exploitation as well, so they're not judging cinema. They're taking it all for what it is, which is a great philosophy to have.
We've seen other boutique labels re-release several titles over the years. If Treasured Films felt like they could improve the package, would they go for a re-release of a title?
If we like the film and we think we could do an half decent job with it, then we'll go for it. As long as we don't want to lose money, but we're not going to make a load. As long as we cover overheads, it's about passion. Once you lose the passion, you might as well pack it in and forget it.
Well, there we have it. Big thank you to Graham and Tom from Treasured Films for taking the time to chat.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
I've linked their webpage and their Facebook profile down below.
Okay, thank you very much.
If you want to check them out and keep tabs on what they've got coming up in the future. If you would like to see the whole interview, completely unedited, where we also discuss their vinyl releases, among other little things too, check out my Patreon page where I'll make it available to all people that are on my DVD tier. Thank you for watching. If you're still here at the end, drop me a comment saying, I love boutique labels, and I'll make sure I say hi. Please don't forget to hit that like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And obviously you can check out my other videos here, wherever I put them.